Hi, lovely people. Welcome to Zopplady. And today I have a special topic that most parents shy away from, including my own parents. Yeah. So this is what to know about your child's sexual development and how to foster healthy sexuality in your children. I mean, from 0 to 5 or 6 years old. Yeah. So this is the topic for today. And today I am not really an expert in this field. So today, a resource person will be the one taking us through this process. And her name is Mrs. Nolina Rust. Yeah, and then her company name is Play Therapy Pretoria. And today she's my special guest, and she's the one going to do us that special honors. And before I introduce you to her, and then she introduce herself to you, there's some of the things that she's going to talk about. Is nudity, the red flags that you have to look out for in your children when they are sexually being abused and you do not know about it. There are some red flags she would make mention of. An example of it is a sudden fear, drawing. Children like drawing, but when they draw and all their drawings has the sexual organs on their drawing, this is one of the red flags you should look out for. But then, of course, since I said I'm not an expert, she's going to dive into it deeper and deeper and will educate you on it more. Another one to also look out for, excessive touching, especially if your child is a girl, when she inserts her fingers in her private part excessively, is also a red flag, and she's the one going to do justice on this topic. Another one she also did mention is when is the right time to start talking about sex to your children, especially the very, very young ones. When you're buffing them, is it the right time to start talking to them about it? And what do they need to know? Because you cannot start talking about things that is above the child's age. So she is the right person to give you much details on it. Yeah, so without much ado, I'd like to introduce you to our resource person. Yeah, thank you. See you in the next stage where she's taking us through the whole process. And this is going to be in two parts, part one and part two. Thank you so much. See you. Bye-bye. Hi, lovely people. Welcome to Zopplady, my channel once again. And today I have such a wonderful resource person who is going to talk about sexual education for kids. And I would like to introduce you to her. She will talk much about herself, her services, how long she's been working on this kind of special topics. So without much ado, please welcome my guest for today's session. Yeah.
Hello everyone. Thank you for including me in this. It's wonderful to be a part of this. My name is Nolene. My surname is Rust. I'm a registered counsellor, and you will find me on Facebook at Play Therapy Pretoria. I'm the founder of Play Therapy Pretoria. I'm doing counselling with young people, and I'm doing emotional assessments as well as sexual education programs with young kids. So the place of work, my work is based on doing therapy with children, but also doing parental guidance, and I also am doing focusing with my parental guidance on helping parents who are worried that their kids might have been sexually abused. So I spend time with the parents, and I also do pre-forensic. What is it's called pre-forensic is a pre-assessment to see if there are red lights in terms of sexual abuse. So you will find me under Play Therapy Pretoria. You will see me on Facebook there doing my thing. So this program came about me love working and assessing young children, and so many sexual themes started to come out when I do an emotional assessment with especially young kids, that I decided I need to know more. I need to study more. So I studied further in social work, specifically focusing on forensic social work, which has to do with investigating the possibilities of abuse. So that's where I started this line of specialty field in that, because there were too many children coming in my doors that were struggling, too many red lights, and we still need to protect our children. So then I studied further, and from there on, most cases that my colleagues also referred to me had to do with pre-forensic and with sexual abuse. And from that, I started getting involved in schools, doing sexual education programs with young kids, teaching them about the law. What does the law say? Teaching them about how to keep themselves safe, and teaching them about the pitfalls and the problems with electronic devices and having access to internet and having access to pornography and naked pictures, and what is abuse and when to report and who to report it to. That was the other thing that really stood out for me. And as far as my services go, so I do parental guidance, I do play therapy as a means of healing through any kind of trauma. Then I do the social emotional assessments, where we look at how our kids are doing socially and emotionally. And I do the pre-forensic assessments, where I look at are there worries or concerns specifically regarding abuse. And if there are concerns, I will jump into parental guidance, and we will refer the kids then further for specialized forensic education, or forensic assessment first, and then forensic education in terms of the parents as well. What else do I do? Yeah, that's pretty much my services. I love doing parental guidance, and then I host mini workshops like these. I love to keep it small, so I can come out to any group. We can tailor make the workshop regarding young kids, or sexuality and my tween, sexuality and my teenager, and the red lights regarding that, as well as due diligence training in terms of what does the law say, what do we do when there is sexual abuse, training for schools needing to know what the answers are when there's sexual play in the classroom, how to involve the parents, when to report, when to not involve parents, training that focuses on that. So that's pretty much what I do. I'm very excited about today's session. My expectations would be to empower these moms, because we're a group of moms today with very young children. So it's never too early to have your own mentality in line or on par with what we can and should do to equip our kids sexually. So these are very young kids, so I would love to talk to the mommies today about the age group of 0 to 5, and I would love to first spend some time on mommy's questions, because we always have questions about the sexual. So I'm going to start with that, and then we're going to zoom into normal sexual development for this age group, 0 to 5, what the normal development looks like, and then we're going to look at what the inappropriate and the abnormal could look like in this specific age group. And I'm looking forward to spending time with the moms and just to get a feel for this group and what their questions are regarding the sexual.
Yeah, well, I'm also really looking forward, because I'm also a young mama.
Also a mom, né? You've got 3 boys,
I have
right?
3 boys, yes.
It's awesome. It's a blessing to have boys. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for involving me.
Thank you so much. So this is the end of the part 1, and then we'll go to the part 2, and then we'll do a short introduction. I'll let her do a short introduction when we get to part 2. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Social work, forensic practice. So I did investigations into allegations of sexual abuse. So it's that knowledge that I'm pulling from today when I'm talking to you about healthy sexuality and healthy norms and values when it comes to the sexual. So I'm going to tell you what my stance is and where I come from. I am a Christian. So you would maybe hear, from of my viewpoints, you would hear the Christian undertone. But bear with me if you're not a Christian. Just bear with me in terms of where I come from. We are made in a specific way, and there's a grand design in our bodies, in how we are made.
She can't get her suit off, but it's...
So, our gender refers to, am I male or female? That's gender. Am I born male or female? The first day of conception, I'm already a male or a female. The moment the cells start to divide, I'm already allocated a spot, whether it's a male spot in this world or universe, or whether it's a female spot. So my gender, in my viewpoint, based on all the research I've done, also based on my values as a human being, my premise is that our gender connects like this to our calling and our purpose. So there's a reason why I'm born female. And my gender, side note, has to do much more with the ideas that I hold about who I am, where I'm going, than it actually has to do with my biological body parts. That also I want to put out there. When we look at the medical world, we look at what can go wrong genetically when the babies are formed. It's very few and far between. I don't even know the statistics. But there's only a little bit of kids born having both gender, biological, physical parts. And we can all think of Caster Semenya. There's a medical thing that happens there. But she identified with a specific gender. And that's on a spiritual level, not on a biological level. Here, she identified as being a girl and liking girl things ever since she was born. Right, so that is what we call gender identity. My identity in my head, the view I have of, am I male or am I female? And the idea that I have, is it okay to be male? Is it okay to be female? But that usually I ingrain in my talks with adolescents, or when I encourage parents of teenagers and adolescents about gender and sexuality. We don't have time today to do that, but that's a different ball game and a different can of worms. So if we look at the babies, that's my one premise that I start off with when the direction goes into sexual education and all of that, is there's a purpose to my gender. There's a purpose to the way that I was made. And that has more to do with my future and my calling than it in the moment has to do with my body parts. But the message that as a parent you think of that idea and holds that idea in my head, the message for my babies would then already come from that place. That you are born marvelously. You have toes. The first thing we do is we count when our kids are born, eh? We count their toes and their fingers, giving them the message that you are perfect. So why distinguish? Why already by this age treat our kids as if they are a body, a head and toes? They also have other parts. And maybe in the way that we deal with them, in the way we baby massage them, in the way that we bath them, we can already make comments fostering healthy gender identity. You are a baby girl. You are wonderful. Oh, look, you pee-peed. You pee-pee using your vagina, or whatever the word is you want to give them. It's wonderful that you have a vagina that you can pee-pee with. You also have fingers. Let's count your fingers. Why should we linger on one body part more than another? Why should we focus more? So the premise here, when we raise our kids and we want healthy sexual kids, because we are body, mind, and soul, and our sexuality links with each and every one of those. My sexuality is linked to my body. It's linked to my mind, who I think I am, what I think about girls. Is it okay that I am a girl? And my soul. What is God's purpose for me as a female? There's purpose for me. Whatever it is with the journey that God has as for me. So that's what we're going to start off with. That's the language we use with our kids. Years before we teach them about penises and vaginas. Years before. There's a normal body message that comes through. That's the way you were made, and it's marvelous. And nobody's confused about the fact that you are a boy because God gave you a penis. Guess what? Boys have penises. It's awesome. It's awesome that your penis works. Again, you pee-peed me into the eye on that penis of yours. But it's marvelous that your penis works. Great stuff. And this penis we're going to keep healthy because God willing, you might have children one day. So you need your penis to actually have a baby one day. Obviously, we're not going to tell a 3-year-old that, but that's a normal message for a 10, 11, 12-year-old. But that's where we start. Your gender, not even yet your sexuality, your gender is marvelous, wonderful. We need to combine that with how I was made and why I'm here. We can't jump into menstruation and penises and ejaculation and masturbation when we don't have this right yet. So there's a purpose and a calling for you, and you were made in love. That moment that you were conceived was delicate. It was perfect. Because if we think about pregnancy, it's almost like, and I'm a Christian so I can't really say this, but it's almost like the planets need to line up for me to be pregnant, because there's so many things that need to be right at the same time for an actual baby to grow. And you as a baby, you came from love. You came from love. And we wanted you. Whatever your story was, we wanted you. Our souls need to know that when we come into this life, there's a purpose to you, and you were made in love and you were wanted. That already gives our healthy kids the idea, later on now, sex and sexuality should come from that place. I was made in a wonderful, marvelous way. When the kids grow up, they get old enough to distinguish between what happens in the world with sex and what happens not in the world, but in my heart. And maybe in God's commodity, if you're a Christian. There's a vast difference. We don't have time to get into all the religions of that, but there is a difference, because we can see in the world what's going on around us, what is advocated for in terms of sexual development. And my question to you as a mommy is, do you want your child to believe what the world believes about sex? And it terrifies me to say, but we have from 0 to 6 years old to give proper and good sexual foundations in terms of the values that we want our kids to have about sex and sexuality. Maybe you girls know this, but most children from the age of 8 say that they get their info, 5 to 10 years back, if I would ask 8 or 9-year-olds what is sex, where they get the info, they would say from friends. In today's time, when I ask them that, they would say from the internet. Right. So that's one thing. The internet will be there, the cell phones will be there. But I can show you groups of kids who were left to their own literally to their own devices, versus a group of kids who have devices, but they also had an adult next to them helping them interpret what they just Googled and what they just saw. Because kids don't just know stuff. Have you seen that before? They don't just know they need to say thank you and please. We teach them that. Why don't we also then not teach them about the sexual? Everything we want our kids to know is something that they are taught. So we can't this one night when everybody was flustered and a bit sweaty because there was a sexual incident, we gave him one conversation that lasted an awkward 25 minutes, and now I think I've done my part in guiding and teaching my child about the sexual. And now I'm setting him off as an adult or teenager, hoping he would make good sexual choices. The equivalent of that would be to teach my child, to teach my child once how to drive a car. And I'm sending him off to go get his license, and I'm sort of hoping he'll get it. And he won't make accidents on the way. It's the exact same thing with the sexual. It's the exact same thing. I want my child to make good choices. I want her to have a healthy value and ideas about the sexual. That's obviously very important. And it's very okay that, no, it's not okay. It's my calling. It's my responsibility to teach her values. And it's my responsibility to teach her my values, whatever those may be. And I'm going to draw a parallel to worldly values. So if we think of smoking, Mama, but so-and-so's dad smokes. Yes, but why can't I smoke? My son is Rust. You're a Rust. And in our household of Rusts, do you see anyone smoke? And why not? Because we don't like smoking. I'm not judging smokers. That's not my point I'm making. The point I'm making is that my child knows I belong to this group. And within this group, this and this and this is normal. This and this and this is allowable. This and this and this is not negotiable at all. Whatever it is, that's what we call values. So if you keep on having conversations with your husband or with the people who help you raise your kids, now is the time. They're still very small, but now is the time to have conversations regarding the sexual. What do I want my kid to know? What do I not want my kid to know regarding the sexual? And then we don't only teach it, but we model it as well. So, and I always tell my moms and dads in counseling, whether it's young children or older children, your children's strongest experience counts. That's the one that counts. So make sure when they're still young, before 6 years old, that you are the strongest experience in all aspects, including the sexual. That you are the strongest experience. So if you're only once in 365 days going to talk to your child about sex, you're not going to be the strongest experience. Can I ask, do you girls want to guess by which age most children are exposed to pornography? Just guess a random age. Okay?
But I'm only going by what I heard on the radio.
I'm steering more to what you girls are saying. We want to be relevant in sexuality. So what was relevant 20 years ago when we grew up, or 10 years or 12 years ago, it's not relevant anymore. Because there's so many other forces playing in. Cell phones, internet, social media, billboards, boards next to the roads. Have you seen last year and the year before the Sexpo boards? Anyway, okay, I'm leaving that there. So we're not relevant if we teach this the way our moms taught us. Because culturally new things are happening. And we can't stop culture from emerging and from evolving. We can't. We need to adapt. Okay, so to all everybody who's teachers now, what is the age? It points to 7 or 8 years old. It points to 7 or 8. But we've got a mommy here who said 5. In certain communities, it's even younger than 5. It depends on what that child is exposed to. So when there are communities where there's poverty, there are communities where there's substance abuse, and there are communities where supervision of children is a bit scarce, and there's communities where criminal elements are, and communities where there are child-headed households. The average age of exposure is absolutely 4 or 5 years old. It depends on the community. So that is what that is. But okay, so usually the question would be, I'm going to go through the questions and then I'll go through what is normal. But the usual questions for young kids would be, when do I start telling them about babies and where babies come from? The moment your child has been made aware, you have a day, and then you need to start telling them. I do sexual education with 3-year-olds in the secluded cases where that 3-year-old was exposed. And 3-year-olds are exposed in our country. If your kid is not exposed, by the latest 6 years old, because your kid will go to grade 1, grade 2, and they're going to get exposed. By the latest then, we should at least tell them the basics. And we should do it in such a way that they know we're okay with this. And if you're not okay with this theme, and you're sweating and you get purple face syndrome, practice with a mirror, saying the words and teaching, or practice with your husband without blushing, using the words and discussing with your husband what messages are we going to give. And we should sort of try and give info, remain factual, but also link our values to that. That's what the facts are about sex. This is my value, what I believe about this, as a Rust or as a Van die Kerk or whatever your surname is. So you should be thinking of really doing sex ed by the age of 6 or 7. Even earlier if you know your child has been exposed. If my child is exposed, there's already a file in her head, if I may use the computer analogy. So I want to make sure it's the factual and correct file, but I also want to make sure it's an age-appropriate file. So I'm not going to give too much detail for a 6-year-old, but I'm going to tell a 6-year-old that a husband, no, not a husband, a man and a woman fit together like a puzzle piece. And if they come together and they have what we call sex, a baby can be born. Can you hear the careful choosing of my words? It's not a mommy and a daddy. Because these days, teenagers have sex. It's not only mommies and daddies who have sex. So your child is going to see that and going to think you lied to me. So we choose our words. When a man and a woman come together, they can become pregnant. It's not that they will, but they can. Yes, mommy, but how? That's my kid. So when you're 6 or 7 years old, might want to know exactly how. And it's as simple and as difficult as telling them that there's a seed that a man has and there's an egg that a mommy has. You may choose your wording. The verdict is out about should we use the proper words or not. That's your prerogative in your family with your value systems. That's what I'm going to say about that, as long as it's consistent. And as long as you don't have purple face when you use your words. All right. So there's a seed and they come together, or an egg cell. Girls and women have egg cells. They're born with egg cells, hidden away deep in a special place in their bodies. And a man or a teenage boy's body starts to produce sperm. I want to call my viewpoint, my values is we call the name the name. We call a spade a spade. That's how I choose to raise my girl. So when that comes together, a baby can be made. So if you just leave it at that, for a lot of kids by 6 years old, that would be enough. Another marvelous thing for a 6-year-old is you show them what animal puppies look like. Maybe some of us live in a farm or have friends who do. That's a wonderful sex education tool. Look, a puppy was born. How do you think this puppy was born? So it takes the human a bit away from it, but it gives them the animal kingdom to fall back on. And it's normal. Maybe even if it's not too traumatic and you think it's okay, maybe even when they have a question about your two dogs mounting each other or the one being on the back of the other one, maybe factually just explain to him, oh, they're trying to make a baby. Something like that. We should never give info to a child that's going to freak them out. We should never give info to a child that's confusing. And we should never give info that a child by his age cannot do something with. A 6-year-old cannot do anything with stonies, and that's when the boys start to develop and their nipples get sore. It's stonies. They cannot do anything with the term ejaculate. What will a 6-year-old be doing with that? So an 8, 9, 10-year-old, we can give those info. We can give that info to, those terms. But a younger child, let's just give them info that they can chew on. But we guide alongside, we're like a coach. The mommy and daddy is always like a coach, alongside them, helping them to pack out this info.
Do you mean like that they can relate to in their world? Like
yes, give an example of, and explain to them the normalcy of it, as well as your family's values about it. We don't just say sex is when a penis goes into a vagina, and we leave it at that. No. We give guidance with. Sometimes people do that for fun. Sometimes they do that because they love each other. Sometimes they do that because they want to have children. But us as a family believe that we're only going to do that when there's a ring, because that's what we as Rusts believe. So you see what I did? I gave the facts, but I connected it with a moral or a value. And that's what is wonderful and horrible about the comprehensive sexual education program that's being rolled out in schools. Some teachers are good enough and oulik enough to give that moral guidance, but some other teachers won't. They would just give the facts. And that's an issue for some kids because it can give them a bit of a crisis. We always need to connect whatever we're teaching sexually to a value, because we are raising children and we want them to have proper values about this thing. So that's a good age to do it, except if you know that your kid has been exposed earlier, then it might be worth your while to do it a bit earlier. It should actually be. When there's sexual exposure, it's like a little light that gets turned on. It's like a match. We can do, and research tells us this, we can do what we want it's going to pop up again. There's lots of biological reasons for this, but sex and sexuality is in the brain stem, and it has to do with survival. So when your 4-year-old is experiencing and showing overt sexual behavior, you need to have done not only sex education, but also, to an extent, counseling, sexual body safety counseling, as soon as possible. You need to guide this behavior. And it again depends on the age group. Because if your 10-year-old was exposed, we can guide him and her behavior a bit easier than a 4-year-old because of cognitive development. But it needs to be guided nonetheless. We cannot say stoat, and we put it, the sexual behavior. We can't put it in a little package and we tell our child, stoat, we're going to cover this up and nobody's ever allowed to open this. And we're going to expect of our child that would happen. It's not going to happen. I'm now talking about masturbation, ejection, all of those kind of things. We can't just pretend that it didn't happen and wish our child would stop with that behavior. We need to address it. And a professional can tell you whether that behavior is normal, or if it's not appropriate, or if it's abnormal. We have 3 categories: normal sexual behavior, abnormal sexual behavior, and inappropriate sexual behavior. So regarding, if I get back again to questions that parents usually ask, some children are extroverts. So you would know exactly when they have what kind of a question, because their emotions and their thoughts are always on their sleeves. So it's a bit easier to know by 6 years old what do they already know, and should I teach them something. But we also have on this side our introvert kids. We don't know what's going on here. So it's, as parent, my responsibility for that kid to check in weekly, to get bits and pieces of information through to my child about the sexual. Some of our kids are so shy. They won't come to us and ask, Mommy, when do girls wear bras? Mommy, what is menstruation? Or what is my vagina? I had a little girl who called it a vagina. You know, for those kids who are introverted and more shy, we need to create the space. And you create the space for talking about sexuality throughout the day at any moment. So now your child sees someone kissing on 7de Laan, eh? So you see your child kissing someone and that's most now a moment. You hit the pause button and you talk about that. Your child sees you and daddy kiss, she comes in, no, yuck, don't kiss. That's a moment. And my research with parents and sexual abuse has proven to show, has proven that it shows for most kids who are young, we talk about the sexual and they're open to talk about it when it's bath time. Because it's a physical, caretaking activity. That's such a good time. And we foster normal gender health in that time as well. Look at your toes. Let's put some powder on there. Let's powder your legs. Oh, this is your vagina. Let's put some powder on your vagina. You know, and you go through all the body parts because they should all be even. But we come maybe from a time in history where all body parts were not even, eh? You're not supposed to talk about a vagina. It's actually, technically, it's not a vagina. It's a labia or vulva. And then again, the kids would go to Volvo, which is a car. So I can see how that can go confusing. But there's 2 schools of thoughts about which words and names you use. That's the other question I always get. As long as the words that you use for a penis and a vagina fosters body safety for your child. So it should be protecting your child. If I teach my child my penis is a fool, en oom Stefans het 'n actual fool, and he showed his fool to my child. And my child tells me, Mommy, oom Stefan showed me his fool. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm thinking it's the bird. But if that boy of mine were to know, we call that a penis. And my boy would come to me and tell me, oom Stefan showed me his penis, I would know exactly. In no uncertain terms. So the wording we use should foster safety. And the wording we use should be conveyed in a healthy, this is not an issue kind of thing. if penis is for you an issue and it doesn't even roll from your tongue, please don't use the word penis. Because your child picks up on your non-verbals. Picking up that you, penis, child picks up on that. Child picks up on that. So that's a couple of questions I usually get. I also get the bathing question. When do we stop bathing together? Maybe siblings, all right? When one of the two starts to tell or show that I'm getting shy now, or I'm in need of privacy when I bath, that's the time you separate. When one of them starts to be overly interested in the other one's body parts, with touching, that's a good time. Without fostering guilt, without going like, oh, bath time again. No. You know what? Give another reason for why you're separating them now. And it's the same with an adult. Yes, Ursula?
So can I maybe just interject right here?
Yes, please.
Just ask me.
Your eldest gets to a certain age.
Yeah.
It's naturally going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, now please close the door, Dad.
Yeah.
Or Daddy, I want to bath alone now. It's just in a normal situation, it normally just happens. For some kids by 7, for some kids by 11, which is fine. As long as both parties agree and both parties are comfortable.
Okay.
So I'm going to touch on the nudity now, but what I wanted to say still also about the bathing, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's a marvelous opportunity to teach their little one about naked boundaries and bathing together when they bath together. There's no better time than that. And I had a dad, he had such a fright after there was an allegation of sexual abuse in his family. That was daddy and boys' shower time. Every night they did it together and he just stopped because there were other sexual abuse stuff happening at school. But this dad cried when I told him, Papa, he said, I miss out on this. I told him, Papa, if everything is within the norm in that shower, why stop that precious time with your boy? But he cried of relief because he told me that's their bonding time. But now I'm not talking about a dad who was alleged perpetrator. I'm not talking about that. Eh? I'm not talking about that at all. And that's bonding time, isn't it? Especially when they're young. So the moment one of the parties do not feel comfortable, even if one of those is an adult, the whole putting your jockeys on the dads or covering the penis when...
Why is your penis sometimes hanging down and why is it sometimes not hanging down? And it's not a sexual thing, and obviously in that context.
It's just a curious thing.
So you can obviously just explain to her that it's like a morning thing, that maybe the bladder is full, a physical thing for men, that it's sometimes harder.
We give her a
sometimes
biological
softer.
answer on her level. There's lots of blood flow, and maybe daddy needs to go to the toilet, and that's it.
Yeah.
Sweet and short. We give them the facts that they can digest at their age.
Yeah.
And you give the normalcy. It's normal. It happens to men.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe something like that. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because we don't want to stop that. It's really, and obviously everyone, if she would feel uncomfortable, we would obviously stop that, but...
yeah, I think it might come from her. It will come. From her age, that she will one of these, not one of these days yet, but in a bit,
no, of course.
She'll wake up and she'll just say, I'm not going to sit with you anymore, or whatever, you know? Absolutely. And you give her value. Again, that's a very wonderful teaching moment.
Yeah.
So by the time she's 12, and boys tell her, look at what my penis can do, she's like, I know what penises can do. Get away from me,
Yeah.
So it actually makes kids street smart, which is good for our girls to be a bit street smart, And then, so it's a trainable moment.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you also connect the value to that.
Yeah.
In our house, it's okay to sleep naked, but when you go visit someone else, you're not going to sleep naked or something. You just put a value in there as well, together with the facts. Yeah, keep it sweet and short.
Thank you.
That's a relevant question. It's a good question.
Thank you.
All right, so may I launch into what is normal for the first 2 years? I just want to see if I can now open up that PowerPoint from a different place.